Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling the book of Daniel, all 12 chapters. We'll unpack the stories and the symbolism, but I'm really hoping we can pull out those messages that still resonate today.
The way this ancient text just keeps speaking to us. History, prophecy, personal stories, all mixed up.
Exactly. And we've got a lot to get through. Nebuchadnezzar's dreams, Daniel's visions of the future, fiery furnaces, hungry lions. We even have a mysterious handwriting on a wall.
Sounds like you've been reading my thriller novel collection.
True. But under all the drama and intrigue, there are layers of meaning.
Yeah. We see themes of faith and courage popping up. And it's all about God's sovereignty, these stories. They're reminders that even when things get really rough, it makes a difference to hold on to what you believe.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Chapter 1. We meet Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. There's some of the young Israelites taken captive when Nebuchadnezzar conquers Jerusalem.
But it's interesting, they're not just thrown into slavery, they're picked for special training in the Babylonian court. Imagine being forced to blend into the culture of your captors, learning their language, their customs, even eating their food.
Like a high-stakes cultural exchange program. But there's a catch. The food and wine, likely tied to idol worship. And that's a big problem for these young men. They're totally devoted to their God.
A culture clash. A test of faith right off the bat. Do they compromise everything they believe in to fit in, to move up in this new system? Or do they stand their ground and risk everything, even their lives?
And Daniel, even though he's young, shows real wisdom and courage. He approaches the situation so carefully and with real conviction. Instead of just refusing the king's food, which could be seen as rebellious, he suggests an experiment.
A 10-day experiment. He's like, let us eat vegetables and drink water for 10 days. Compare us to those eating the fancy food from the king's table.
And then he says, if we don't look healthier, we'll do whatever you say.
It's bold, and it shows he trusts God to look after them. He puts his faith on the line. He believes God will honor their commitment to their beliefs.
And the amazing thing is, it works. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends look healthier and stronger. It might seem like a small victory, but it sets the stage. It shows their faith won't waver. And they're willing to be different, even when it's hard.
That's a powerful lesson. It shows that staying true to what you believe, even when things are tough, can lead to amazing results. You never know.
But the real test is in chapter 2,
Mm-hmm.
with Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Things get intense, really intense. Nebuchadnezzar has this vivid dream. It's really messed up. But he can't remember it. All he remembers is the feeling, pure dread.
Waking up from a nightmare, right? The fear sticks around even though you can't remember why.
Exactly. So he calls all his advisors, magicians, enchanters, astrologers, the whole mystical crew. And he demands they tell him the dream A&D, what it means.
Can you imagine the pressure?
No one, they say. Not even the gods can do that. But the king. He's convinced they're stalling. So he makes a terrifying announcement. Death to all the wise men.
That's when Daniel and his friends are in real danger. It's not just about figuring out a dream. It's life or death. And it's all about their faith.
But Daniel, wise as always, he asks for time to pray. He believes God will reveal the dream. And spoiler alert, he's right.
Daniel has a vision. God shows him the dream. A huge statue made of different metals. Each metal represents a different kingdom. The last kingdom, feet of iron and clay. Then a stone, cut without human hands, smashes the statue's feet. The whole thing crumbles.
That image and the meaning behind it, deeper than you think, the statue. It represents all these empires throughout history, each one less impressive, more fragile than the last. But that stone, that's God's kingdom, the one that lasts forever, crushing all the earthly powers.
That theme runs through the whole book. God's in charge, over all of history. Human kingdoms might seem powerful, but they don't last.
And Nebuchadnezzar, he's blown away by how accurate Daniel is, the depth of his interpretation. He recognizes Daniel's God, calls him the God of gods, promotes Daniel, gives him power over all the wise men in Babylon.
That's a crazy turn of events. Daniel and his friends, they were captives. Now they're in charge, right in the heart of the empire that took them. But their faith, it's about to be tested again, in a much bigger way.
You're talking about the fiery furnace, chapter 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They refuse to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue, even if it means death.
Right, it's such a famous story. It shows how strong their faith is. They won't worship anyone but the one true God, no matter the cost.
Nebuchadnezzar, though, feeling invincible after all his victories, convinced he's the greatest, builds this huge golden statue, and everyone has to worship it. It's a challenge, directly to the Israelites' faith. Obey God or obey the king.
Earthly power versus God. and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No hesitation, they make it clear. God comes first.
They say, "Our God can save us from the fire. He will save us from you. But even if he doesn't, we will not save your gods or worship your golden statue."
Total faith, even when death is staring them in the face. And Nebuchadnezzar, he's furious. He orders the furnace heated 7 times hotter.
I can feel the heat just reading this. They're tied up and thrown into this inferno. The flames are so hot they kill the guards.
No way they can survive that.
Mm-hmm.
But then Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace, and what does he see? 4 figures walking around in the fire, unharmed.
And that fourth one, like a son of the gods, he says. Talk about spine-tingling. There's no denying it. It's a miracle. They walk out of the furnace, not even a burn, no smell of smoke.
God protected them in the most impossible situation. And Nebuchadnezzar has to admit Daniel's God is the real deal. He makes a decree praising their God. No one can speak against him.
It happens again and again in Daniel. These powerful kings, so arrogant, they have to face the truth. God's in control. But the challenge is to faith. They keep coming. In chapter 4, it's Nebuchadnezzar's turn. He gets humbled.
It's like the tables turn. Now he's the one with a disturbing dream. So vivid. He needs Daniel's help to understand.
He dreams of this massive tree reaching up to heaven. It gives shade and food to everyone. But then a messenger from heaven shows up, orders the tree cut down, branches stripped, leaves scattered, only the stump and roots left, bound with iron and bronze.
And then it gets weird. The dream shows a man, his spirit's inside the tree. He's driven away to live with animals, eating grass like an ox, for 7 years. It's bizarre. Nebuchadnezzar needs to know what it means.
He turns to Daniel. "You have the spirit of the holy gods," he says. "You can understand these messages."
Daniel doesn't know what to say at first. The dream troubles him. But then he explains. The mighty tree, that's Nebuchadnezzar. He's reached great heights, but his pride has grown out of control.
The tree being cut down, that's God's judgment. Nebuchadnezzar will lose his mind, his humanity, live like a wild animal for 7 years, until he realizes God rules over everything and chooses who's in charge.
Daniel, he's compassionate. He tells Nebuchadnezzar to repent, turn away from his wicked ways, show mercy to the poor. Maybe his punishment will be less severe.
But it seems Nebuchadnezzar doesn't listen. A year later, walking on his palace roof, still full of pride, he boasts about Babylon, says he built it all himself.
And right then, a voice booms from heaven. His kingdom is taken away. Just like Daniel said, Nebuchadnezzar loses his mind, driven away from people, lives like an animal. Hair like eagle feathers, nails like bird claws.
What happens when you let pride take over? Scary. A mighty king becomes a shadow of his former self.
But that's not the end. After 7 years, he gets his sanity back. He looks up to heaven and praises God, admits that God's in control, his kingdom is restored. He's a changed man. He realizes true greatness doesn't come from power. It comes from humility, from bowing before God.
Redemption, the power of recognizing you're not all powerful.
Chapter 5, New King, Belshazzar. A feast that seals his fate.
Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's successor, he throws this huge party, 1,000 of his lords, but he gets drunk and orders the sacred vessels from the Jerusalem temple to be used for toasts. You know, the ones Nebuchadnezzar brought back.
Sacrilege, provoking the God of Israel, like he's daring something to happen. And it does.
Right in the middle of the party, a hand appears out of thin air, writing on the wall. Imagine the scene. Music stops. Laughter dies down. Everyone's staring in terror.
Belshazzar freaks out, calls for his wise men, offers riches and power to anyone who can read the writing, but no one can.
It shows you human wisdom, earthly power, limited, some things we just can't understand.
He feels helpless. Then the queen remembers Daniel, the one who understood Nebuchadnezzar's dream. They bring Daniel in. Belshazzar begs him to read the writing, offers him the same rewards.
But Daniel isn't impressed. He calls Belshazzar out for his arrogance, his disrespect for God, reminds him what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. His pride led to his downfall, warns him that judgment is coming.
Then Daniel reads the writing. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. God's message, judgment on Belshazzar.
The countdown has begun, Daniel explains. Mene means God has counted Belshazzar's days as king. Tekel means he's been weighed and found wanting. Pirs, which also means divided, means his kingdom will be given to the Medes and Persians.
Prophecy of doom. That very night, Belshazzar is killed, his kingdom conquered, just like the writing on the wall said.
Pride and the truth of God's word.
Chapter 6, New King, Darius the Mede. But even with new leadership, Daniel's faith is challenged. This time, it's not fire or a message on a wall. It's more subtle. but just as dangerous.
A trap. They want to use his devotion to God against him, force him to choose between faith and loyalty to the king.
The Lion's Den, a story of courage, faith.
Mm.
A king who respects Daniel but has to uphold the law. But I think we should save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Lots to unpack there. A perfect example of how the book of Daniel still has lessons for us today. New management, Darius the Mede, on the throne. Things seem pretty good at first. He's impressed with Daniel, gives him a high position.
Yeah. It looks like Daniel's hard work and honesty are finally paying off. Maybe he'll become one of the most important people in the kingdom.
But you know, it's the book of Daniel. Things rarely stay calm for long. The people who are jealous of Daniel, they start plotting, looking for a way to take him down.
It's like they can't handle seeing someone succeed because they're good at what they do, so they have to play dirty.
Exactly. And they can't find anything wrong with Daniel's work. He's just too good. So what do? They target his faith. They know Daniel's devotion to God is something he won't compromise.
That's smart, but sneaky. They get Darius to make a decree, no praying to any god or man except the king himself, for 30 days. It sounds like a way to unite everyone, make them loyal to the king. But really, it's a trap, made just for Daniel.
A spiritual test. They know he won't give up praying, won't abandon his relationship with God.
And Daniel does exactly what you'd expect. He keeps praying, openly, 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem, just like always. He's not hiding anything. He's choosing to honor God, even though it means breaking the king's law.
Standing by your convictions, even when the consequences could be bad, really bad.
Of course, his enemies are watching, waiting for their chance. They run to Darius. Remember your decree, the penalty for disobedience, Lion's Den.
That decree, that's a death sentence, all because Daniel wouldn't give up his faith.
Darius is in a tough spot. He likes Daniel. He's valuable to the kingdom. But Darius made a law, and he has to uphold it. He tries to find a way out. But his advisors, they're insistent. The law is the law.
Human laws versus divine laws. Earthly justice versus something higher.
Darius has no choice. He orders Daniel into the lion's den. A huge stone is rolled across the entrance. That's it. Will Daniel's faith be enough to save him?
Darius is up all night, worried sick, can't eat. At dawn, he runs to the den. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?
Hope and fear all mixed together. Is there even a chance of a miracle?
And then, from inside the den, Daniel's voice, calm. O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you.
Relief.
Yeah.
Vindication. Daniel's faith was pushed to the limit, and he's fine. God protected him, even in the darkest place.
Darius is ecstatic. He orders Daniel out of the den immediately. Not a single injury. It's a miracle, and it changes Darius.
He sees that Daniel's God isn't some distant being. He's real. He's active in the world.
Right away, Darius makes a new decree. This time, it's about praising Daniel's God, acknowledging his power to save those who believe.
The opposite of the last decree, a public declaration of faith, because he saw proof, undeniable proof.
Even in the face of adversity, faith wins and inspires others. But the book of Daniel isn't just about individuals. It's about the big picture, God's plan for the world, the flow of history.
That's where the visions come in. Chapters 7 through 12. Symbolic, prophetic,
Yeah.
strange creatures, cryptic messages, glimpses of the future.
Right. Apocalyptic literature, dreams, visions, symbols. That part of the Bible that can seem a bit mysterious, even scary.
It can be tough.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly rewarding. It makes you use your imagination, look beyond the surface, wrestle with the bigger questions, the patterns in history.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the 4 beasts in chapter 7, empires rising and falling. What other visions does Daniel have?
Well, chapter 8, Daniel sees a ram and a goat. They represent the Medo-Persian Empire fighting the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great. This vision, it predicts actual historical events, things that hadn't happened yet. God's prophetic word, accurate.
Like peeking into God's timeline, seeing things unfold exactly as planned.
Exactly. Then chapter 9, Daniel is studying Jeremiah's prophecies, the one about 70 years of exile for the Israelites. He's praying, trying to understand. And then bam, the angel Gabriel appears. Gives him more insights into the prophecies, the timing, the meaning.
Daniel goes to God for guidance
Yeah.
and gets a revelation.
Yeah. It's not just about coming back from exile. It's about the Messiah, the hope for the future, God's kingdom, fully established.
From individual stories of faith to these big, sweeping visions of history and prophecy, the book of Daniel zooms out, gives us a cosmic perspective.
That's it. And then chapter 12. It ends with a message of hope. for those who stay faithful to God.
What are the key takeaways from that last chapter?
Tribulation, great tribulation, persecution, testing, but the names written in the book of life, they'll be saved. And those who lead others to righteousness, they'll shine like stars forever.
Words of encouragement for those going through tough times. Faithfulness to God has its rewards, not just in this life, but in the next.
It ends with instructions. Seal up the words of this book until the time of the end, meaning we won't fully understand Daniel's visions until later.
One final mystery. There's always more to learn, more to discover about God's plan.
Makes you want to keep searching, keep exploring, keep digging deeper into this amazing book.
Before we move on to those other visions in Daniel, there's one more story from Darius's reign. It shows how important it is to ask for God's guidance, to trust his wisdom, even when things are uncertain. It's the story about the inscription on the temple wall, the one Daniel has to figure out.
Ah, yes. The mysterious inscription. A lot of people forget about it, but it shows you the challenges of deciphering hidden messages and how important it is to rely on God's inspiration.
Chapter 5. The mystery unfolds. It's right after Babylon falls. Darius is trying to solidify his rule over the new kingdom. Darius is in charge. Things are pretty calm for Daniel. He's proven himself. But then this inscription shows up, throws everyone off.
A riddle from the past. Suddenly everyone's talking about it. No one can figure it out.
Just some words on a wall. But it makes people nervous.
Of course. People want to understand things, make sense of the world. When we see something we can't explain, it's unsettling.
And that's where Daniel comes in. Everyone knows he's the guy who can figure things out. Darius needs his help.
They bring Daniel to the temple. He looks at the inscription, thinks about it. It's quiet. Not like those dramatic scenes we've talked about.
Daniel's the detective, trying to solve the mystery. What does he find out?
We don't actually know what the inscription said. Makes it even more interesting. But Daniel prays. God inspires him. He figures out the meaning. And it's a big deal for Darius, for the whole kingdom.
Sometimes you need more than just your brain. You need guidance from somewhere higher.
That's right. The inscription. It's a message about rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, the project that's been stuck for years. It's a sign of hope for the Israelites. They can go home, rebuild their holy place.
This random inscription changes everything.
God works in mysterious ways. Little things can have big consequences.
Darius is impressed. He makes a decree, supports the rebuilding of the temple, gives the Israelites resources, protection. They can return to their land.
A turning point in the story. Even in exile, God's plan is in motion.
Understanding those hidden messages, it can change the world.
But there's more to Daniel. Chapters 7 through 12, visions, prophecies, the future.
Apocalyptic stuff. Dreams, visions, symbols. It can be a little intimidating.
Challenging, yeah. But so rich, it makes you use your imagination. Think about the deeper meaning of things, the patterns in history.
We talked about those four beasts, the empires. What other visions does Daniel see?
Chapter 8, a ram and a goat. Medo-Persian Empire versus the Greeks, Alexander the Great, God's prophecy, showing what's going to happen.
A sneak peek at God's timeline.
Exactly. Then, chapter 9, Daniel's reading Jeremiah, the prophecy about 70 years of exile. He prays, tries to understand. The angel Gabriel shows up, explains it all.
Daniel asks for help. God gives him answers.
It's not just about going home, it's about the Messiah, the future hope, God's kingdom coming to earth.
From personal stories to visions of history, the book of Daniel takes us to a whole new level, a bigger perspective.
Absolutely. And then, chapter 12, the end, a message of hope for those who are faithful.
What does that last chapter tell us?
Tribulation, terrible times, persecution. But those who are written in the book of life, they will be saved. And those who lead others to righteousness, they will shine like stars forever.
Encouragement for when things are rough. Stay faithful to God. It's worth it.
And the ending. Seal up the words of this book. We won't fully get it until the end times.
A final mystery. Always something more to learn about God's plan.
Right. Makes you want to keep searching, keep learning.
So the book of Daniel,
Yeah.
Empires rising and falling, chaos, uncertainty, but God's in control. That's the message.
It's about hope, even when you can't see the whole picture. Trust in something bigger.
It makes you want to be better, have courage, stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Our faith will be rewarded in this life and the next.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the book of Daniel. Hopefully you learned something new. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep.